Welcome back to your favorite podcast, Scales and Tales, episode 173. We're joined by a gentleman all the way down there in AZ. If you guys remember, a couple weeks ago we had Cody Stoddard on, and his like whole gig outside of the fishing scene, kind of what we talked about pretty heavily, was the media side of things. Obviously, you guys know that is something I'm very passionate about and kind of what I'm focusing on for 2025. So I'm excited to bring on another swimbait angler who focuses a lot on the media side of things and kind of is his passion outside of the fishing thing as well. We're joined by Mr. Garritt, Garrett Gilbert, all the way down there in Arizona, and nice and warm considering where I am right now. But we're gonna talk to Garrett, introduce him, obviously, get to hear what he's all about, hear about his. So when Cody was on, he was talking about how his red cameras, if you guys didn't look those cameras up, I mean, they're 40, 50, 60 grand, absolute cinematography cameras that you'd see on the set of a movie, essentially. And so Garrett kind of has a little bit of a different approach to it that I think is super badass. It's super unique. And we kind of will hear his story on why this style is something that he's super interested in. So I'm going to let Garrett introduce himself. And as always, we're going to dive into it. We're going to talk about the media. We'll talk about his intro to fishing, how he got into that, and kind of go in chronological order. Once we get to the media side of things, we'll focus on that for probably about 20, 30 minutes, and then we'll kind of circle back around into the whole media swim bait thing, what he's up to within the last couple of years, and talk about that. So, Garrett, introduce yourself to the people who may not be familiar with you, man.
Thanks, Adrian. What's going on, everybody? My name is Garrett Gilbert, currently residing out of Tempe, Arizona, here in Phoenix. Um, San Diego born and raised. Been out here for about 15 years, so it's been a bit of a 50-50, but this is where I call home.
Heck yeah, dude. Growing up in San Diego, so and always first call. Oh, okay, no, I forgot. We do icebreakers now. So I'm going to ask you two random questions. You can give a super long answer, super short answer, whatever it may be. And this is a question that I asked the last guest, but it's just such a good question that I have to ask it again. So we're getting up. You and I come down there. We're getting ready to go fish tomorrow morning. But as always, you have to stop on the gas station on the way to the body of water that we're going to. What's your go-to gas station snack? What do you got to pick up maybe for a midday pick-me-up snack, or maybe just kind of start your morning? What's like the essentials from a gas station you're picking up before a big trip?
Oh man, I'm a creature of habit, so this is an easy one. Typically, if we're hitting a morning sesh, I'm grabbing myself a little Starbucks double shot, just
Mm,
the espresso and cream for a little mid-morning pickup, and then bag of Cheez-Its, dude. Keep it real, real vanilla. OG
really?
Cheez-Its, good
Bag
bag
of
of Cheez-Its.
Cheez-Its.
Yeah, but if I'm feeling real spicy, I'll get one of those terrible for you beef and cheese stick combos.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Dang, dude.
that's kind of the
Cheez-Its.
charcuterie board for me.
Yeah, Cheez-Its, man. That was that I don't know, not a huge fan of Cheez-Its. You guys can crucify me if you're a big Cheez-Its guy, but dude, that was interesting. I don't know if I've really like gone on a trip with anybody. They're like, dude, these Cheez-Its, these are gonna hit at about 2:30. Like this is gonna be our soul food while we're out there. That is
Yeah.
interesting. I might have to go get a bag of Cheez-Its tomorrow morning and kind of indulge in it and see if I've come around to the taste of it. Not, I don't know, man. Never been able to get around to it. Just kind of plain. I don't know. You do you, man. You may love them, but I just have. It's been a while. Maybe I'll have to come back to it. And then the next question for you is, so you're a media guy. We've kind of talked over Instagram and stuff like that. So right now, as you sit, are you more of a like whether it's a consuming or a like production side of things, are you more of a short form content guy or a long form content guy, and why?
I'd say long form. I mean, we'll probably get into this a little bit more, but I came from skateboarding industry. Pretty much, just a bunch of low income skate rack kids, just whatever camera we get our hands on and compiling as much footage as we can. So I've always been drawn to full length films. I mean, I know we kind of live in an age now where you get instant gratification and you're just
Yeah.
consuming 10, 15 seconds at a time. But when I got into video making and even just watching films when I was a little bit younger on a skateboard, I was always drawn to those full length kind of feature films. So um, yeah, I'd say 10 plus minutes usually,
Yeah. Heck yeah,
longer
dude.
format
Awesome.
videos.
Yeah, that's I've come around to the long form stuff. Obviously, kind of in today's age, like you said, you need those quick dopamine hits to kind of get people to really maybe throw you a follow or throw you a like or a share, whatever it may be. But I think I'm a sucker for long form content. If I can sit down and watch a video and sit down for 10, 15 minutes and think, damn, I am glad I spent my time doing that rather than consuming 125 mediocre short videos, then I'm pretty content with that, man.
Yeah.
So you said you were born and grew up in San Diego, around San Diego.
Yep.
Okay,
Born and
so
raised in the Mesa.
okay. So did well, you've kind of already talked about the skating and kind of obviously the fishing side of things. What came first for you being out there? Obviously, we know that the fishing out there is crazy good, and we also, well, I would think a lot of people know that like California has a pretty solid skate scene. So what was like the first thing for you that kind of got you into where we are today?
Yeah, definitely for me, it was skateboarding. I don't think fishing came till right about, I think it's summer right before I moved out to Phoenix, I started fishing. So I didn't really get to capitalize too much on what San Diego has to offer for bass fishing, unfortunately, as a kid. But I did get bit by the bug pretty young out there. Had some good bodies of water we would frequent. So I saw some, some big fish coming out of Lake Murray or even Santee Lakes, places like that, were the couple of places I got to fish for one summer. But yeah, it was mainly skateboarding. At about 12 or 13, got my first board. And like I said, there was we all kind of saved up, bought one camera together, and we would all just everybody gets a turn recording for the day. And at the end of the day, we kind of compile everybody's footage. So I think that's kind of how I got started on the longer format stuff. Was you got seven, eight homies all trying to
Yeah.
get their couple seconds of fame. This is pre even YouTube back in Windows Movie Maker days. So,
Dang.
um, yeah, we were doing the skateboarding thing, and then one of my buddies, my best friend growing up, his older brother got into fishing. I think one summer before us, he was a year older, um, and we went down to met him at Santee Lakes one day. Out there, it's kind of like a man-made chain of I think it's like six or seven lakes. There's a campground in the last couple. Um, and he was out there bass fishing by this time, but we went out there with he had a little bucket of mealworms and we just started bluegill fishing. I mean, I think we slayed probably 100 plus bluegill in the 1 hour it took the sun to go down. And after that, yeah, I was no pun intended. I got hooked. We started going out there on the weekends more or less skating, a little bit more fishing. And then, yeah, and then on to Arizona shortly after that. So it's kind of where it started for me.
That's sweet, dude. So the time we're recording this, I'll probably post about it before, but I just finished up I think it was the biography of the guy who started Vans, the shoe company, and like that started in like the 60s, and he talks about how his son really got him and got Vans essentially into the skate scene and like with the Bone Brigade and all like the whole how Vans really like grew with the whole skate scene and the whole like sports scene like that. And it was super cool to hear. So, what was your first insight to skating out there? I mean, like the way that they talk about it in this book, it was such a rich culture, and I kind of from like all the Thrasher stuff I've watched from like the early 2000s and middle to late 90s, like you can tell it just seemed like everybody had a board and everybody kind of had a group that they all hung out with, and kind of everybody got into filming, whether people stuck with it or not. It was kind of like the cool thing. Like if you're skateboarding, one of your homies has a camera and they have the fisheye lens and you guys are going out and filming. So what was your introduction to skating, and then kind of when did you guys decide that you wanted to start filming it?
Yeah, definitely. My mom was she was very strict when I was a kid. A lot of my friends were running around the streets of San Diego by the time we were, 10, 12, 13. But I wasn't necessarily allowed to go off and venture from, kind of the line of sight. So they built a skate park actually in San Diego called, I think it was the Ray and Joan Croc Center. It was like a Salvation Army Rec Center.
Hmm.
And they built a little prefabricated skate park, just a little building that had a couple of prefab ramps in it. And I was allowed to go there from sunup to sundown, as long as I covered the money to pay for the session. So we did that for about a year or so. I think that was, yeah, about 12 years old. I think so. I was what, seventh, eighth grade. And during the summer, we'd kind of, I'd get permission to go to Jack in the Box down the road or whatever it was, to get some food, and we'd
Yeah.
venture a block further or a block further this way, and started finding spots and dipping my toes in that way. So unofficially started street skating just in short, small little windows that we had on food runs and things before I had to get back to the park. But once I got, a little bit more comfortable and um, a little more comfortable doing that and just get a little bit better lay of the land in the town, my mom kind of started extending that leash a little bit further. And yeah, I mean, by the time I was about 13, we were almost done with the skate parks at that point. It was always just any schoolyard we could find, any ditch spot, anything we can get to on foot. was pretty much fair game. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So was this like, were you guys kind of in the fishing scene how like guys will find out about swim baits, whether it's like just through YouTube or whatnot, they don't know maybe how big the scene is. So for you guys, like did you know about like Thrasher or a couple of the other like big skate companies? Or you were you guys familiar with how big the scene was, or was that something you guys were kind of learning for yourself and just doing because it was cool to do and maybe not familiar with what else was out there?
Yeah, I think it started a little bit as transportation, and then I had a buddy actually in eighth grade whose dad worked for. It was a. I was friends with the second oldest brother. He had an older brother and two younger brothers. His name was Nate, and he was my age. But his dad worked as a contest announcer. I think it was Gravity Games back then.
Okay.
It was one of the big like skate BMX kind of contests. And then he also worked at Osiris, and then he worked at Tumyeto, which owns Toy Machine and Foundation Skateboards. So they had this super rad above ground built wooden bowl in their backyard, and that was kind of my introduction. I didn't know any better. I didn't know these guys that were, kind of frequenting that area were like some of
Yeah.
these big pros. And so we'd see these guys at this backyard ramp while we're skating, and they were good, but the bar was set real low for me, just kind of getting into it. Everybody that could stay on their board was good to me. And then afterwards, we would go watch. He had an insane DVD collection, and be like, "Oh, that was that dude that was just here," or we'd see a
Mhm.
spot that was at our elementary school or our middle school, and more I started seeing things either from the freeway or wherever else. In San Diego, since it's kind of a mecca for skateboarding, I would see more and more of these things in the videos, and that's about the time I started kind of really realizing the magnitude of just how expansive it was. Because this is pre YouTube, pre social media. I think MySpace was just kind of starting at that time, so it was real limited as far as like the access you got to what other people was doing
Yeah.
until a video came out. A year or two after they had started filming it. So the drops in between content was few and far between. So it was kind of hard to get a gauge on what was old stuff and then like what was, the new spots or what was kind of trending at the time.
Right, yeah. Was a lot of the stuff back then kind of put out by just groups of guys who would edit all this stuff on their, Windows 95 and then burn a bunch of discs and hand them out, or kind of what was the process back then? I can't imagine that there were like production companies that were going out and helping these guys kind of make these films, or what was the process of like getting going to somebody's house and seeing all these DVDs on their, on their entertainment stand, like kind of what was the way to make that happen if you wanted people to watch you skate back then?
Yeah, definitely. I was, I'm still pretty green to the industry as far as like media goes as a
Yeah.
whole. I was post VHS, like kind of right in the beginning of the DVD scene. You had some of the big companies, the ones that you would see in a skate shop, board sponsors, shoe sponsors. And then even around that time, like skate shops themselves started doing videos,
Okay.
which was like a good platform for the dudes that weren't as on, they weren't as sponsored, they weren't getting paychecks, but they were still good. That was kind of the track to getting onto companies, as you would get in with the shop first, just kind of building it off of the community-based kind of model, and then from there they would, put you in contact with a rep at this company or this company. And then if you got involved with those guys that were on the bigger companies, usually they had a budget
Yeah.
for stuff. I mean skateboarding film budgets are nowhere near like an actual movie
Yeah.
budget, but that's kind of how it went is the sponsors would kind of help the shot videos out or help, just the pro videos out. But yeah, that's pretty much is. There's a small little budget for video stuff. They might pay guys, a per diem of a couple bucks a day to
Hmm.
sit in a van and go travel around the states, pay for hotels and stuff. But yeah, it was all pretty much everybody kind of pitched in. I feel like at that point to get these videos done, it wasn't like this nowadays with you got Street League and big Nike checks and things like that can really help up production value.
Yeah.
Back then, it was kind of everybody just pitched in and try to help out.
Yeah. And so when you guys like you said, there was like MySpace may have just been on the up and up then, but were you like learning a lot of like the tricks and kind of who like obviously you said who these people were and stuff. You were like directly learning it through these DVDs, through these kind of films that these guys were putting out. Like I don't know, that's kind of crazy to think that you may have no idea what a trick is, and you watch a guy do it on a film, and you sit there and you watch it. You rewind it 45 times to see how he's working his feet, and then you go out and try to do it, and you're like, "What the hell, dude? Like, how the hell did he do it?" And you go and rewind it 40 more times. You're like, "Oh, he kicked here when I've been trying to flat foot or whatever it may be." Dude, that's kind of
Yeah.
crazy to think about. Is that like what it was like?
Definitely. I mean, if you had a solid crew, I mean, I think that's probably how I was on a board for a couple of years before I could really even just ollie on flat ground. More so just the mechanics of pushing and balancing. It wasn't until much later that I actually started, learning tricks and filming myself or putting together video parts, or getting sponsors and things like that. But yeah, you were kind of relying on the crew you had. So, like a lot of other things, you're as good as the people you surround yourself with. And so if you've got, a group of friends that are good for your guys' kind of talent pool, then you kind of just pull from them, and it's not going to be one for one. You're not going to learn everything that your homies are, but if you got a big enough crew and you got enough guys doing different kinds of tricks, that's kind of how you wrote the playbook, was just trying a little bit of this, trying a little bit of that, seeing how someone did it, and then putting your own little spin on it. But yeah, it's wild. I mean, I'm not that old, so there was pioneers way before, when I was in the scene. But yeah, you kind of just had to figure it out and see, it might take one good slam, trying one trick, and you're like, I don't think I'm going to skate rails. I might be a kind of a legend manual peg guy and stay close to the ground. But yeah, it's kind of how you learn. It's just, you know, ventured out until you got a little too spooked to keep trying something, and then you might try something else. But
Yeah. When did you guys kind of decide like, hey, we've watched enough videos, we've kind of learned our own stuff or whatever it may be, we want to try our hand at making just something that we can watch or we can kind of look back on next year or whatever it may be. When did you guys
yeah.
decide to go in on a camera and kind of take the chance, or not even take the chance? When did you guys decide that you wanted to spend the money on a camera and kind of mess around with that side of the scene?
I think the first one actually, it was pretty similar to, I'm holding this up on the camera, they can't see it, but one of these old high 8 cameras. We had a family one at my house that just sat in a box for years. And we didn't know, that these guys were filming on mini DV tapes and we were filming on high 8, or they were filming on, P2 cards or whatever it was at the time. It recorded. So I think it was, yeah, the summer right before I moved out here. So that would have been '06, '07, was when we started taking the camera out more once we left the skate park. But yeah, I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. You'd use the OG templates that were in Windows Movie Maker or whatnot, and put a couple things together, and then you'd figure out like, oh shoot, I don't even know how to put this on a DVD now, or
Mhm.
maybe my computer doesn't have a DVD drive back then when computers were still transitioning from like floppy disks and
Yeah.
things. So a lot of it was just more so for us to watch when we got back to the house after the weekend, or throughout the weekdays, after school and things, just kind of reminisce on the weekends. But it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 years later that we actually started figuring out how to upload stuff and produce videos and stuff like that. It was more so just, yeah, us messing around on the computer when we got home from
Yeah. Were,
school.
were you on LimeWire downloading the hot songs and messing up your computer to put over the videos?
Yeah, LimeWire, BearShare, all of it, dude.
Man, that is awesome. That's freaking awesome. So,
Yeah.
like, while you guys are kind of doing all the filming and stuff, were you ever drawn, like, specifically towards the filming more so than maybe the skating side of things, where you're like, man, this is fun being behind the camera and kind of like framing stuff up and kind of working angles and stuff. Like, were you ever drawn to the media side and been like, man, this is like, I kind of want to maybe do this in the future, kind of look at where this can take me in the scene rather than maybe trying to win an event or something like that to kind of headline a sponsor, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Um, no, I mean, to be completely honest, that wasn't the game plan at all. If I'm being completely honest, it was like, I'm gonna make it as a skateboarder. Everybody's got, that first kind of love, first passion that they want to turn into, some sort of art form that they want to try their hand at making money at. And it wasn't so much the money, but I figured if I was gonna be in skateboarding, it was gonna be on a board, as long as I could. And so that would have been from about 12 to 13. It wasn't until I was about 20, 21, jumping ahead, way ahead. But I
Yeah.
had a pretty bad ACL surgery,
Uh,
like a lot of guys do. And you get so enveloped in this crew of dudes, and not only are you skating with them, but you're hanging out with them after you guys go skating. You're doing whatever else on the weekends, like that becomes your core unit. And if you can't hang on a skateboard, like I quickly realized that, there's a little bit of a missing puzzle piece in kind of that social
mhm.
interaction there. So I just got a camera of my own and started filming. I'd always had kind of a passion for point and shoot little 35 millimeter cameras and stuff when I'd be on the road skating, when I was more on a board than
Yeah.
behind a camera. So I'd always like kind of framing stuff and just taking stuff for personal use. But yeah, it wasn't until I was about 21 that I started kind of getting behind a camera myself, and really got drawn to that and took to that and was having just as much or more fun. nailing it behind the lens as I was trying to do it in front of the lens. And it was a
Yeah.
lot easier on the body too.
Right, right. Did you realize how much could change and how much more was offered from the media side of things from when you were, that 12 to 13 up until 2021? Like, I'm sure in that couple of years there, maybe not necessarily YouTube, but there was more of a network for skating and kind of you had outlets out there where you could kind of consume more content and stuff. Like, did that make you excited to be behind the camera that maybe there was more opportunities than there was, 8, 9 years ago beforehand?
Yeah, definitely. And to add on top of that, the shelf life is a lot longer
Yeah.
on the media side. You have a small window. Some guys get lucky, it's 10 plus years, but you've got like when you're really on top of your A game and like performing and excelling and trying to push yourself, you've got like a maybe, 3 to 5 window where you're really like, can't be stopped. And then once you're outside that window, it's a lot harder to catch back up on the performance side of like skateboarding. But behind the camera, what I was realizing when I was filming all of my own video parts and things like that was um, you can do the coolest trick, but if someone doesn't capture it right, or the it's blown out, or the white balance is all off, or it's just super shaky, like that trick is really good for nothing in a video. And so I kind of really realized the importance of having something properly framed and lit and compiled is just as important or more important than the trick itself to make it look good. So I saw a lot of value in that. And I wanted to be able to provide that to my friends as well as just kind of another, reliable resource to make sure that, what they're putting all their bodies on the line for and expending all this energy doing, is worth it. Yes, we enjoy doing it as skateboarders, but if you're filming, the root of it is that you want to get that on film. It's not just for the love at that point. So, um, yeah, I saw a lot of value in that and really just took to it and kind of found that as a new avenue to kind of excel in was being behind a camera.
Yeah, so me not being in the scene, I don't really know, but did you ever feel like if you watched a film or whatever it may be, did it ever seem like the guy who was capturing it and editing it got overlooked because, the guy in front of the camera was getting all the eyes and everything, or was it kind of known who was behind the camera, like, oh, so and so filmed it and edited it, like it's gonna be good, the last three movies he's made are all super good. Like, is there a following on the media side of things? Like, are there camera guys who everybody knows and everybody's like, oh, dude, I want that type of guy to film me, or is it more so the guy in front of the camera that gets a lot of the, I guess, attention and like notoriety from the films?
Yeah, I don't think maybe a little bit more with social media. There's a little bit more appreciation for the people behind the lens. I'd say photographers definitely have like a high bar set, and that's a little bit more. Um, Takes a little bit more skill to properly light a
Yeah,
spot and especially if you're shooting on film like an old medium format camera or something there's like a much higher skill level involved, but as far as like just your normal skate filmers, you got guys like Mike obviously at Working Class and things that are top tier that are kind of like the guys that film the videos I grew up watching. But as far as like from that generation till now, it was so accessible. There's a lot of faceless names just behind a camera. And for every one guy you can name it's a filmer, I can name 20, 30 guys that are skateboarders. So it is a much smaller pool, but even then, there's not as much room, I guess, to stand out unless you're doing a lot of like different things in post production or custom titles or animations, things like that. The barrier to entry is very low, so a lot of guys can get behind a lens with a couple $100.
yeah, heck yeah, dude. Kind of going back towards the fishing side of things, and then we'll circle back to the media stuff now. So, that what would you say, like 13, 14 was when you got into the, like, when you experienced that super good day with the bluegill fishing and stuff. So,
Yeah.
like, from that course, when we jumped from like 12 to 13 up to 2021, did you still kind of, I guess, essentially like keep in contact with fishing? Like, it was something you guys would go do one evening, like if maybe you guys were fucking sore from skating, you guys are like, oh, we're gonna go down to the ramp or to the dock and go catch some fish or whatnot. What kind of
Yeah.
role did that play for you side by side with skating growing up over that course, that timeline?
Yeah, so when I moved here, it was going into ninth grade out to Queen Creek, Arizona. At that point, it was Arizona's blown up in the last 4 years, a lot of suburbs everywhere, and just keeps on going. But back then, I mean, I was moving to a nice suburban area, and there I had 4 dairy farms within like 3 square miles of me. Like it was pretty rural still, just outside the city. And any sort of bodies of water we have, the big lakes, the Salt River chain that you see Jeff and those guys on. We've got Saguaro, we got Canyon Lake, Apache. There's a couple, but from where I was at, that's, at least an hour away. And I was at the age where I couldn't drive. So the only access to water I had was these little neighborhood ponds. And there might have been some small bass in there, but the fishing was nothing like, the access I had in San Diego. So it pretty much took a back seat. And when I moved to Arizona, around that time, it was skateboarding was the only priority, the only focus, for quite a few years. And it wasn't until, like a lot of people, I think, during COVID, when I had a lot of downtime, that I really got back into bass fishing, full force. So yeah, it was a pretty long hiatus. I think maybe once or twice I went out to a neighborhood pond and threw some hot dogs if we're just hanging out with the boys or something, trying to catch some catfish. But it was, yeah, I can count on one hand in that span of time, how many times I fished.
Right. And so I guess so we'll fast forward a little bit to COVID or around COVID. You being in the skate scene, obviously Mike Gilbert, working class hero, if you guys will obviously just gonna refer to him as Mike. But so did you kind of know you probably had an idea who Mike was from the videos and stuff that he had posted from the skate scene, or at least kind of had heard his name, I assume.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
oh no, you're good. I was just gonna ask if you had known kind of that he had ever transitioned into the fishing scene, or was that something you like stumbled into?
Yeah, that was just a pleasant surprise. I mean, growing up in San Diego, Zero, was based out of San Diego. So that was like, kind of a crew of dudes that I looked up to. And I knew him through that, plus various other companies that he filmed for back in the day. And was much, very much so a skateboard nerd for all those years. And then when I got back into fishing and saw that, I was completely detached. Didn't even know he had made a transition into fishing. And so that was kind of a pleasant surprise. And then, as I started doing a little bit more poking and prodding and just perusing on Instagram, I saw how many more dudes there are from, action sports that kind of made the transition over to fishing in a way that can push yourself, kind of the same way that skateboarding or an action sport does. A self-reliant skill that's tougher than the average kind of, you know, uh, what would you call it? The normal kind of avenue that people take.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask, what do you think the why do you think there's so many guys that transition from like the BMX skate scene? There's a lot of guys who are really big into the surf scene too that dabble or are into the swimbait fishing thing. Do you think, like you said, it's just because like it's I mean, I don't know, what's your thought behind it? Do you think there's any specific reason, or is it just something that maybe like somebody'd see Mike do it on his Instagram story one day or something? They're like, "Oh, dude, that looks sick. Like maybe I'll try to get into that." And they kind of, like the way it sounds is everybody in the skate scene kind of knows each other. So if somebody picks up something, they're like, "Dude, that's crazy. That's badass. Like I'm gonna try my hand at that." Do you think it kind of grew through the grapevine like that, or more so like, "Hey, this guy's doing something pretty badass that not anybody else is doing. I'm gonna try to mess around with it too."
Yeah. Of course, I only have my perspective. I think there might be a little bit of that kind of a carryover that maybe Mike brought from the action sports world. But when I was balls deep in skateboarding, like that was the only focus and it's not a very lucrative lifestyle, I guess you could say. So to be able to have the startup funds to buy even a, average $200-300 decent setup, plus the baits, and then plus have the access to water, I don't feel like it's as easy of a transition for some guys. It's
Right.
become a little bit more available now. You see it through Instagram and there's all sorts of price points and stuff to get into it. But what I think is that, a lot of guys that were at the level, whether it was, I don't want to name drop, but you got Jared, who's a BMX guy,
Yeah.
Jared, and then you've got some other guys. I got a homie, Aaron Wilson. He's a pro skateboarder for a company called Heroin Skateboards. He's out of Houston, but all the guys that are at that level where they were filming and really trying to push themselves, I think those guys have an understanding of like delayed gratification that
Yeah.
necessarily like or that the entry level skateboarder might not have, or the person that's pushing around in a scooter at the skate park.
Mhm.
They understand, what it's like to go to a spot 3, 4, 5 times, deplete yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and maybe not even still land the trick, or you landed a way you didn't want to. And I think that there's a huge correlation there with with kind of the swim bait fishing, that niche model of, like I just said before we hopped on, I'm 0 and 9 on my last 9 trips. I've gotten, maybe one follower, but I haven't connected with any fish. Um, but it's nothing new. We're used to the delayed gratification and putting the time in to have it pay off later. So I think at that, once they find swim bait fishing to circle back, I feel like it's just easier to resonate with that kind of thing, as opposed to, like a entry level kind of drop shot or bait,
Yeah.
even bait fishing or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, you kind of gotta bust your ass to see the results or see the results that maybe you're after. It's not like you said, it's not like you pull up to the park, you land the trick the first time, or you get the framing right or the lighting right the first time. You're like, oh shit, like it's gonna take a little bit. Like I'm gonna have to mess around with it. Whereas swim bait fishing is like the point where you gotta go out and maybe you start putting pieces of this puzzle together. You go out your first 10 times and don't catch anything. Like, oh my gosh, this is like when I was trying to learn how to do this one trick and it took me 47
Right.
tries and I broke my ankle twice before I actually landed it for the first time. Like it's that, like you said, it's that same style of like, dude, I'm just gonna stick this out. I'm gonna grind with it until I get there. And that makes a lot of sense. Like how you said they're like putting everything into it, and then the fact that it finally happens, everything finally lines up together. It's like, oh, this is so nice. I just want to do it again now, but maybe on a different level or whatever it may be. Like that. That's probably one of the better explanations I've heard. I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense to me as somebody who's
Yeah.
not necessarily too familiar with the like the skate scene or like with the power sports like that.
Yeah, for sure. And if you land something, I'm not going to say that everything is a huge battle and try to put it up on a pedestal when it's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you go, the stars are aligned, you get out of the car, you do a couple stretches, and you land your trick first go. But
Yeah.
that happens one out of maybe every 100, missions that you're going on. And usually when stuff does happen that easily, if you want to relate it back to fishing, if you're catching fish and crush them on on a drop shot or something, that might satiate, someone else's needs on what they're trying to get from fishing. But for me at least, and some other, skateboarders and things, like if it comes that easy, you could probably be pushing yourself a little bit harder. And so I
Yeah.
feel like, that's where swim bait fishing, you could be a soft bait guy, you could be a hard bait guy, you could be a hard bait guy that fishes stuff on the surface, you could be a hard bait guy that's dragging through, cover. Like you can find your own little style to put on it. And I think that that's another big piece from that kind of world is, like we were talking about earlier, being a good skateboarder but having a bad filmer. Going back to the skateboarder though, like if you're a great skateboarder and you have kind of a wacky style, yeah, it might get some views on Instagram, but to have people that are like, really behind you in the kind of core set of the industry, you got to look good while you're doing it too. And so I feel like that's another kind of parallel to swim bait fishing is you can find your own little style on what kind of baits you're doing or how you're what kind of spots you're fishing, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, dude, for sure. When you kind of around COVID, when you made the switch or kind of got back into fishing, we'll say a little bit more permanently than you were. Did you know that there was a media side of things? Like, did you know guys were making film, or like, we'll just refer to them as films. But did you know that guys were making films or videos like Mike, or you had guys like Jared out there who were filming their stuff as if it was a skate video or a BMX video, but obviously it was revolving around this style of fishing. Was that something that you were kind of like, oh, like this is something that it's super badass, and also you can film it yourself or you can film somebody doing it, and it's kind of that same style of skate video that you were used to watching.
Yeah, not as much. I think I gotta remember which video it was, but all I had really seen at that point, well, I was consuming, kind of typical vlogger content around fishing, wake up, go to the gas station, go to
Yeah.
the spot, maybe catch a fish or two, and then outro, and that's it. That was kind of like what I saw. The majority of these guys were doing if they weren't doing the wacky like gas station challenges or whatever else that they were doing. I hadn't really seen anybody doing any sort of like kind of montage or mashup type stuff like you would see in a skate park where it's not continuous from one day. It's, the catch itself is kind of the clip,
Yeah.
and then splicing that in with B-roll and, good music and things like that. It wasn't until I saw a couple of Mike's videos, I'd say even a year after I'd started fishing again, so probably into 2021, 2022.
Hmm.
I'd seen, a video, I think was it the Misfit video he did with Keith?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but his style was like that in a lot of his videos, where it's
Right.
it's real high pace, high energy. It's a compilation of clips, things like that, and I was like, oh man, this is I know this is, this comes second nature to me from editing skate videos when I was doing that. When I got hurt, I was a filmer for 3, 4 years after that. I made a couple of videos of my own, with other people doing the skateboarding, but I was like, that's what I want to do. I get how to do that, and it might not be the most, mainstream or what these other guys are doing to get views and clicks on YouTube, but that wasn't really what drew me to it. It's identifying with something that I like to watch is the kind of stuff that I want to put out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you were watching, obviously the vlog style stuff, like we'll just, John B, for instance, we'll just throw him out there. Everybody knows who it
Yeah.
is. He's filming it with a pretty nice camera. It's really clean picture, good audio, super clear, not any grain, whatever else it may be. And then you kind of look at, we'll use Mike for example, because everybody knows. You look at one of Mike's videos, it's really dull tones. It's got some film grain in it. It's got, it's a good video, but it's a different level. It's not the super 4K high polished that you would see that you would watch at a movie theater type deal. It's like that skate grunge style that you would watch on a DVD from 2004 style video.
Yep.
When you saw that, were you kind of like, this is badass? Mike kind of brought everything from what he was doing and is applying it to this fishing thing. Like, did that call to you more than the John B style super nice camera vlogging videos? Like, did it mean more watching like a skate style swim bait video than like a polished, YouTuber vlogger video?
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And I'll be the first one to say I still consume that kind of vlogger content too, because there's infinite amounts of it out there. And just being a fishing nerd and appreciating the hobby through and through, I'll watch all that kind of stuff. But to see, someone like Mike's videos where the authenticity comes through, and you can tell like that that's just what he enjoys doing. He did it in skateboarding and now he's doing it here. I think that's kind of what resonated more with me than it being a skate video. That's part of it, obviously visually, but I think, yeah, just knowing it that he's going to make it work to his style, I think was cool. And then that kind of opens up the gates that there is room for that kind of stuff here in fishing. It might not be the conventional route. It might not be what these dudes are doing for, Bassmaster Classic videos or things like that. But there is room for it because people are doing it. And obviously people resonate with it because he's got a very successful brand. So yeah, seeing that was cool. And yeah, it was
Right.
nice to see. It's kind of a breath of fresh air,
Yeah.
then super crisp,
Hmm.
um, bright blues and oranges, real vibrant GoPro commercial looking stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. When you up until COVID, were you still like messing with your camera? Like, were you still filming skate videos or kind of filming for your buddies if they asked you to or whatnot? Or were you kind of done with the whole filming thing and kind of focused on other parts of your life? Or had you always been with the camera in your hand?
Yeah, I think that so from about 2015 is when 2016, I had kind of pretty much hung the board up. I was on my second ACL surgery at that point. The first one didn't hold. And yeah, I was getting to the point where I was at the end of my parents' insurance. So I was just trying to button up a lot of those old injuries I had put off,
Yeah.
wrapped with an ace bandage and put some icy hot on and just kind of muscle through the pain. So that stuff started catching up to me. And so I made a point to get that stuff all dialed in. And then, I was working at a skate shop at the time. I was, very much so still involved in skateboarding, filming, hanging out with all the skate homies at that point. But I kind of needed to make a hard left and figure out what else it was that I wanted to do. And that's kind of how I got into my career now as a graphic designer, and running a creative department at the company I'm at. But just kind of to focus on other things and figure out something else I was good at because I was good at skateboarding. I was good at filming skateboarding, but the juice just wasn't really worth the squeeze at that point. So kind of had to do a hard reset, and then it made it a lot easier to come back to, I still skate recreationally now. Obviously, I'm filming and fishing as well too, but I'm not reliant on that as a, uh, means of income or, just a social group of friends. Like it's more so a treat now than it is, something I have to do.
Yeah, yeah. And so once you kind of stepped back a little bit and you kind of, you saw Mike's videos and stuff, did you kind of get the itch of like, oh man, like I can put my own twist on fishing? Like there's people out there who want to consume this style of video, like this style of content that you were said you were kind of more familiar with from the skate scene. Did you kind of decide at that point like I'm gonna try my hand, maybe make a 2 minute video of me cast and maybe some cast catch clips, or go fish with somebody and kind of film them and put that out there and see what people think? Or were you kind of hesitant on doing that? Was it something that you like were like, I'm so hyped up to do this, or did you kind of have to talk yourself into messing around and kind of spending some time and messing and doing that?
No, definitely. I instantly knew it was something I wanted to do. Knock the dust off a couple old cameras, but kind of like we were talking about earlier, for me is if I'm going to put something out, I'd want to watch it if it wasn't me on the other side of the lens. And being a bit of a perfectionist, I want to set the bar high for myself. And so I've filmed so many things that just have never seen the light of day because I didn't want to film, some epic intro and all these B-roll clips for, a little 1 pounder cast to catch. And so I just kept filming and trying to get more comfortable in front of the camera, behind the camera, testing things out for stuff that just was, excuse me, never going to see the light of day. And then started getting into a rhythm on kind of like what dialing my lakes in, being more consistent on that end, so I can produce more consistent fish,
Mhm.
or sorry, high quality fish more consistently. And then things started kind of being a little bit easier at that point. I would just put something out and started gaining some traction. So from there, I've been kind of just on that same train, trying to keep my cards close to my chest until I have some content that I feel is worth people seeing. Because everybody wants that dopamine hit, everybody wants a couple likes when things are in a bit of a lull. But yeah, I've just been trying to stay consistent on that end.
Heck yeah, dude. Let's kind of dive down. What cameras are you using now? And has it changed much from like that 2015 time when you were filming for a shop or what else it may be?
Yeah, so currently I've got two high eight cameras. So in skateboarding, the kind of standard def before the whole HD revolution took off was the Sony VX 1000. It was a mini DV. So it's a little bit in between kind of these high eight cameras I'm using and then like a modern, just like digital 1080p camera. Uh, but this high eight camera, these are 8 millimeter tapes, like 120 minutes, and they're just your old mom and dad soccer palm camcorder style. That's what I film all my B-roll on. I've got one. It's got a little bit higher quality audio now that I can use for some actual like
Mm.
vlogging or talking clips. And then I have this a little cheap Sony ZV-1F. It's just like a little vlogger cam if I
Yeah.
need any sort of HD B-roll after, post catch or on the way to the spot, outro type stuff. But I pretty much bounce between those two, and then I've got two GoPros. I've got a Hero 8 on the front of the kayak, and then my chest cam's a 9. So I'm running at any given time, at least those two cameras. Plus, I keep the high 8 camera on deck for usually any sort of cool B-roll, or as soon as I catch a fish, I'll kind of film a little compilation of the fish catch, measuring, weighing it, that sort of stuff, the release, and then put that back away. So those are kind of the four cameras I'm using on any given day.
Sick, dude. So, what you talked about kind of how you edited videos back in the day. What are you using to edit videos now? So for anybody who doesn't know, like now I can unplug my SD card from my camera or GoPro, throw it in a DaVinci Resolve software or a Adobe Premiere software. There's a couple other ones that guys use, but with what you're doing, are you able to convert that media into files that those softwares run, or do you have to like run some crazy software that I probably haven't named or I'm not familiar with?
No, so there are some. My This newer camera I've got does have a FireWire port. The other one I was using up until a couple weeks ago just had your typical like red, yellow, and white
Yeah.
audio video cables. But I found this cool thing, and for those of you that can't see it, it's called a Clear Click. It's a capture card, kind of like you would use for
Oh,
gaming,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a little tiny, the little 3-inch monitor that has an SD P2 card like area that plugs in at the top. The camera plugs directly into this. You power this thing, and then I don't know if you've seen my videos, but there's a lot of like scratching, like
yeah,
VHS, like forward rewind.
yeah.
So I do that all through this capture card. So
Damn.
while I'm recording, I'll manually scratch the video a couple different ways, and then I'll save that. It just goes into a normal file when you press start, stop, and then I just upload them the same way I do GoPro clips onto the computer. So um, that's how I do all the kind of lo-fi stuff is through that, and then I just run everything through Premiere and After Effects like you would, standard video editing stuff.
Okay, so for anybody who hasn't watched your videos, like yours is like you're essentially watching it through the viewfinder. Like you have the play button, the pause button, you have the record button and everything, like the old digital black and white analog style controls and stuff. So that capture card is essentially like screen recording through the monitor what you're getting, and you're so that's not After Effects stuff. That is literally you recording it through the camera like that.
Yeah, I'll press play. It'll show the blue like play screen like it would on a normal video,
Yeah.
or sorry, not normal video camera, but like an older camcorder. And I'll press play. I'll usually run it through once, where I won't touch it. I'll just let it play start to finish on the clip. I'll hit
Yep.
stop, then I'll hit start again, and then I'll go through while it's playing without stopping it, and I'll just like kind of like you would mix like a vinyl or something like a
Yeah.
DJ. I'll press fast forward, rewind, and I'll kind of do manual transitions on the
Damn.
clip and save it a couple different ways that way so that you get that kind of older 90s, early 2000s kind of skate VHS vibe, like you would see in an old 411
Yeah.
video or a Transworld video or something. Yeah, so
Damn.
it's a little
So
rigorous, but
yeah.
fun.
So that's like you've got to plan that out. Like you got to kind of have an idea, kind of have a thought in your head of what the final product is going to look like. Run it back a couple times, record it all, and then in post you can kind of cut and transition where you have to, or kind of, oh, this one I went a
Yep.
little too far. I'm going to chop this one out and use this one I did the second time or whatever it may be. Damn, dude. So yeah, you
Yep.
have to. I mean, like I'll write a script like shot ideas and stuff for my videos, but you have to go one
Yeah.
further and you have to implement that in the camera before you can put it on your computer and start dinking with it digitally.
Right.
That's crazy to think about. Like that definitely shows that you've messed around with it a couple times to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't some like anything I was doing to save myself time. I'm kind of that type of person that if I see a video or I want to figure out how to get to the end goal, I'll figure out a way to just do it that works for me. It's not always the most the easiest or the most time sensitive way, but I started doing it like that and I'm pretty fluent with it now, but I could see how someone who's, very good with using downloadable transitions and things could just download something, layer a couple files in
Yeah.
and get it that way. I feel like I lucked out, it does look a little bit more authentic, but it definitely wasn't, I wasn't doing it to be a purist. It was just the only way I could figure out to do it in the beginning.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you know what they say about assuming, but I just assumed that you had bought a bunch of overlay packs, like the 8 millimeter film dust transitions, or the VHS rewind kits and kind of transitions, like where it kind of gets blurry before it starts to go. Like I said, I just
Sure.
assumed that you had bought those on a site and you just overlaid that with your clips and kind of worked with it with overlay screens. So that wow, my mind is blown that you can do all that in camera and then take it out and mess with it a little bit more on the computer. That is crazy. So when you, I guess, do you want to get into like filming with a high resolution Sony or Canon or something, or are you like strictly sold and you kind of like the vibe that you get with your old style in camera experience?
I'm down. I won't say that I'm against it at
Right.
all. At work we've got some what do you call it? Is it the Mavic, the drones,
Yeah, yeah, the Mavic 3s and
right?
4s and
Yeah,
stuff.
we got like a Mavic. We've got the person who's our video person has like a Black Magic. We've got a couple different like HD cameras and 4K cams and stuff, and it's cool to me. But yeah, it's just so saturated for me. It just depends. Like if I was doing work for somebody else,
Yeah.
I would love to use those nicer cameras. I think for myself, um, I've kind of started very lightly to carve out my own path on how I want to make some of this content. So for me right now, I'm chilling. I barely even use any of the HD stuff, minus like I said, some of the little vlogger cam intro, outro, or speaking clips. But yeah, that's I'm pretty stoked on this. And then I've got all sorts of cameras. I got old high eight, or not, sorry, not high eight. What do you call it? Super 8.
Oh yeah,
I got some
Super 8
Super 8
Pro.
cameras, some
Yeah.
60. They're like I got old film cameras too. So I'm really just trying to play with a lot of that old. I kind of geek out on vintage electronics, so trying to use that stuff as much as I can, kind of in this modern space. It's kind of like a little puzzle I like messing with. So.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Have you ever looked into this is gonna playing it onto a TV with the old component three prong components and then screen capturing it off the TV. Like I've seen some crazy videos where guys transition from watching like they'll have the camera over their shoulder watching TV and it'll slow zoom into the TV and then boom, it's a part of the film that they were just watching, like it transitions like that. Have you like looked into doing like just some crazy off the wall stuff like that or implementing that stuff, or is that something that you maybe you'll do down the road, but more so just working with the camera side of things right now?
No, definitely. I mean, I don't know if you can see here, but I've got an old tube TV right
Yeah,
here
dude,
in
just like that.
my living room. No, I've already started messing with some of that stuff. What I run into out here right now, I'm currently in a bit of a drought. Like I was saying, on catching some fish, it'll pick back up in the spring. But I've got so many ideas, and I'm sure you can probably empathize with this. I've got so many ideas and nobody to film.
Yeah, yeah, dude,
So it's
thousand
tough trying
percent.
to be on behind the camera and then try to have something in front of the camera that's worth filming. I struggle with that a lot, but I got a whole running list of all these cool techniques or different things that I want to do. I've got a video I'm currently editing. For Panama that I've been sitting on for a few months now. But working with old 80s and 90s VHS commercials and then interlaying the footage through those.
Yeah,
I've been messing with a bunch of stuff in post, but yeah, it's tough to find someone that'll let me film them or that'll let me film them and they catch a fish. So
yeah, yeah. Dude, that's absolutely insane. The last like kind of question I had for you is I watched the video that you'd made where you and Casey went fishing and I mean, you don't have to exactly say how you did it, but you overlaid the DRT logo, but you matched it with like the film style look. Was that an After Effects thing that you had dude, After Effects, it blows my mind. I've used it a handful of times, but it's like, dude, it melts my brain. Is that something that you kind of implement, like you knew that you wanted to do, and so you implemented it with like a DRT logo in that video?
yeah, so funny story about this, and I don't think anybody's gonna geek out on it like we are, but I've got a couple presets that I use just for like my text, and I'd done a couple titles. I think I made that failsafe video for Matt too over at 86, and he sent me a high res logo, and then I put it in and edited it all in, and I was like, it still looks a little like kind of stark in contrast, like too crispy.
Mhm.
So I started making those logos, the Swimbait Underground logo and the DRT logo in that Ghost video. I made stickers on my phone of those logos.
Damn.
And so I edited the whole video in After Effects, and then since it was lower quality, I just took like a lower quality PNG off the internet,
Yeah.
and it didn't like crisply cut out the edges, so it still kind of has a little bit of a torn edge effect to it. I just add those logos into Instagram's editor on the back end
Damn. So that's like overlay on top of everything else.
for sure.
Damn. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was watching it the other day and I'm like, how did he match the DRT logo to the style of the video? Like it looks like it's a part it looks like it was
Yeah,
directly edited in After Effects or in Adobe. That's all right. If you guys don't have any idea what we're talking about, that's okay. But that's mind blowing that that's how you kind of backdoor did that. That makes a lot of sense. But that's a big brain move right there.
and like I said, sometimes it's just a happy accident that happens when I export it. I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to put the title on it. Let me see what it looks like here. I'm like, oh dude, that looks way better. Let me just start doing that. So now I've got these little, different platforms that I use for different components of the video, whether it be music or titles or things like that. But yeah, that one was not as elaborate as it may seem.
Dang, dude, that's crazy. All right, so we'll kind of stray away from the media side of things a little bit. Obviously, we'll still probably touch on it throughout this next part, but we'll kind of focus on your fishing, kind of what you've been up to since COVID, and kind of how you got into the whole swimbait side of things, and kind of where you're at now. So, 2020, 2021, you kind of find Mike, reconnect with Mike as far as like following him, kind of seeing his content and stuff, and you were getting back into fishing slowly. Was it kind of Mike that put you on to trying the swim bait stuff? Like, oh, this is a guy I'm familiar with. I kind of want to see what his whole deal is, kind of see that he owns a brand and see what that's all about? Or how did the swim bait side of things start for you?
It was a real slow burn. I think so. About 2020, I got back into it. Just had a couple conventional setups. Was mainly kind of your run of the mill bank beater, power fisherman, chatterbaits, square
Yep.
bills, Texas rigs, those sort of things. Um, I'd seen some of the stuff that Mike was putting out, but uh, KZ actually frequented a lot of the spots that I was
Mm.
fishing, and I would just see him passing every now and again. Um, and he's always throwing big baits, obviously, but I would never really see him catch anything. And then I started seeing more and more. He'd go like super late at night and he would post on Fishbrain or on Instagram or whatever it was at the time. He'd post these, good quality fish. And I think my first swim bait I bought was it was a Mag Draft Freestyle, just a 6 inch, which at the time seemed like a gigantic
Yeah.
bait. And I took it to this pond that we would always fish. This is before I started hanging out with him. And I caught like three 4 pounders, I think in like four casts on this thing. And I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. And kept fishing that, fell in love with that bait. That was about as big as it got for a while. And then it wasn't until about 2 years later when I had kind of fished all the local spots with all the conventional things and wasn't seeing much more of an output increase in like the quality or size of fish that I was like, hey, let me I've kind of done that. I've kind of found my style. I'm a little bit past that now. Let me find something I can challenge myself with more. And so I would say it'd be more KZ that kind of,
Mm.
whether he was directly involved in talking about it or not, was just seeing him like dedicated to it and consistently putting up fish. So I was like, all right, there might be something to this for at least like the urban scene. I wasn't even thinking big lakes at this point. But that's kind of where it got started.
Dang, that's crazy. It's awesome that KZ was kind of the guy that you'd seen and kind of seen as him messing with it. Like that's the type of guy that you'd want to kind of talk to and kind of pick his brain about, especially with his experience from Japan to here. That's kind of crazy to be the first, not necessarily glimpse, but like the first person that you interact with on a personal level to kind of hear his stories and see what he's doing. That's badass. So once you got the mag draft, did you, I guess, did you and KZ connect much, or was it more just talking in passing, or did you guys like talk on Instagram or whatever else it may be at the time?
It was more so just in passing, like if I caught a fish or he caught a fish, like, oh, you'd like maybe drop a comment. But
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of guy that although I was very green to swim bait fishing coming from the skateboard community, like I do understand not burning people's spots and like just not encroaching. And I never want to be the guy that seems like I'm trying to get something out of somebody, like I want those interactions to be genuine. And so that was it for a while. Is we just say, "What's up, bro? Sick, cool fish you caught," or whatever it was. And then uh, I never really poked or prodded. Didn't know his story. Didn't know he was even like tapped in with a lot of these companies on a bigger level than your average swimbait fisherman. But it wasn't until about a year and a half ago or so when he first got his boat. I just jokingly hit him up and was like, "Hey, dude, you ever need help splitting gas? Like, hit me up."
Yeah.
And then we exchanged phone numbers. And, I mean, he's the guy I fish with the most often. We go out. Most times he goes out. I'm going out with him now, but yeah, we kind of just saw each other as acquaintances for a couple of years, and then once I was ready to and felt a little bit more confident to where I wasn't, um,
Like encroaching on him
riding his coattails
almost.
or
Yeah,
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 or just asking him like, hey, what about this? What about this? I never want to be the guy. It's just like being annoying. I want to figure it out for myself too. So once I got my footing a little bit, we started going out, fishing ponds or whatnot, and then we started going on the boat and now we fish, pretty often. But
yeah,
that was kind of my fast track, I guess, to swim baiting. Was just him as a point of contact. I would still watch videos and things, but still pretty green to it overall.
yeah, yeah. So after, I mean, dude, you live in a crazy spot for like, there's a lot of guys, not maybe not necessarily a lot's the right word, but relative to where I live per capita, you've got like a lot of guys to talk to watch, to maybe pick their brain about, or whatever it may be. Like, you know, like were you familiar with who you had around your area outside of KZ? Like, did you know like that there was Jeff, or you had CJ, or maybe even Ben at the hookup tackle? Like, were you familiar with the scene that you had in Arizona, more so the Phoenix area?
No, not at all. I mean, that was all still pretty green, or sorry, pretty foreign to me.
Yeah.
I was pretty green. I was talking to KZ here and there. I didn't even know. Uh, and this is not a diss or anything, but I didn't even know what the hookup was because I was a bank fisherman. So Sportsman's Warehouse is as good as Bass Pro, is as good as, online tackle warehouse, whatever it was. I didn't really understand that there was, limited access to things or better quality things that if you went to certain retailers, like that
Yeah.
people valued that kind of stuff from a retailer standpoint. I'd seen some of Jeff's stuff here and there, but it was from like years ago. I think he's been, I don't want to misquote, but he's been doing it, 10 plus years out here. And I'd seen some of his older YouTube videos. But I wasn't even sure that those were lakes that I had access to that he was fishing. So it was never really like in the scope of possibility that I could be doing some of the things that those guys are doing in those areas. Because A, I don't have a boat, and B, I mainly was an urban fisherman at that point. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's crazy that you kind of had an idea, but maybe necessarily didn't know to what extent that was maybe obtainable, I guess, that you couldn't maybe fish where Jeff was fishing or whatever else it may be. That's kind of it's interesting to think about because, you know, me as probably other people like knowing what they know, they're like, oh man, like that's a lake that I could go drop my boat in and maybe have a chance at a fish that KZ
yeah,
or Jeff or Phoenix or whoever else may have the opportunity to catch. That's kind of crazy. It's also crazy how many guys who take the filming side of things so seriously there is in Phoenix or kind of in Arizona. Like at one point in time,
it
there
was
was
weird.
a lot of guys in Arizona who really took the whole content creation side of things. Maybe not necessarily content creation, but
Yeah,
like that were putting up cameras, recording, talking to cameras, breaking stuff down. Like everybody that I just named, Phoenix, CJ, Jeff, you, KZ, Ben. There's a lot of guys who do it, and there
Manny was
was
doing it back then.
yeah, yeah. There was a couple other guys who were doing it back then too. There was a couple guys who used to fish with Jeff, here and there that kind of started YouTube channels as well. It's interesting to see. I guess I'd never thought about it till now, but Phoenix has like a pretty rich following, I guess, in the swim bait scene, and the guys who do it and who have stuck with it all kind of document everything they do, which is super cool as well.
Yeah, it is a little bit wild, and I'm a little bit more acquainted with those guys now again because I was never seeking after trying
Yeah,
to get those guys spots or learn info from. But I talk with those guys here and there. I'll see them on the water, and we're all cool. But it's wild to me, like you were saying, per capita of filmers that there is out here, or people that take this quote unquote seriously, or want to be consistent, I guess, instead of seriously is a better word. Um, but still, in the grand scheme of things, we don't have very many
yeah.
sole big bait guys out here.
Mhm.
Even though we have so much content coming out of the state, yeah, it's wild that you would think we'd have a lot more fishermen picking it up or making the transition only over to big baits.
Yeah, yeah. So after the mag draft and kind of getting to fish with KZ a little bit, was like DRT the next thing you were kind of introduced from based off? I mean, KZ is obviously a DRT guy. So is that something, I mean, you probably saw him fishing those baits quite a bit when you'd out see him around, maybe not necessarily know what they are, but maybe that first time you guys kind of really talked and diced it up, like, were you like, oh, dude, what bait is that? Like, where can I get one or whatever else? Was that kind of your introduction outside of the mag draft to maybe like the quote unquote like custom production style bait?
Yeah, he put me on my first. I mean, the mag draft would be my first actual swim bait fish,
Yeah.
but as far as like tailored for this kind of swim bait fishing or JDM type baits, it was the Tiny Clash. He put me on my first swim bait fish. This was April 2 years ago, so 2023. April 2023. So I mean, it's been a bit of a crash course the last 2 years, but yeah, it was the Tiny Clash, and then I picked up one of those on my own, grabbed a couple extra lips, and then yeah, it's kind of been off to the races from there. I'm still compared to a lot of guys, I keep a very small quiver of tools that I fish with. I'm not one of those guys that has a couple hundred baits. I've gone through a lot of baits, getting into it, but
Mhm.
I stick with a couple that produce for me, and then I tweak from there. But I've got a yeah in comparison, a pretty small swim bait collection compared to a lot of these guys.
Right, yeah. It is kind of nice from where you are that the bass fishing scene is pretty well established and kind of like we were talking about. There's swim bait stuff there, maybe not necessarily anything too crazy, but the hookup tackle does carry, the gear that you would need to get into it. So it's kind of nice how you have kind of have some places that you can stop in, pick somebody's brain about, or talk to Jeff or KZ or whoever it may be, and be like, hey, dude, checking out this rod. Are you familiar with it? Heard anything good, bad? You ever use it or whatnot? And then you can go feel it in person. That's like the big thing that a lot of guys maybe don't necessarily have the
Yeah.
yeah, like they can't go out and feel what the new Dobbins Fury, if they're first getting into it, what the Dobbins Fury feels like compared to a custom production rod or a Mega Bass or whatever it may be. Like it's kind of sick when guys have that experience and they can not necessarily get it right the first time, but you can buy quality gear that you like and that you know how it feels before Tackle Warehouse spends 3 weeks getting it to you, and you're like, this rod, I don't know if I can catch a fish on this rod. I don't know if I can feel a bite on this rod. Like that's something that kind of Arizona, California, and maybe like Georgia, maybe a couple other small shops on like the East Coast have
Yeah.
access to. That's something that I've always been jealous about when guys get into it in areas that kind of have a scene semi-established like that.
Yeah, it's paramount for sure. And I growing up being a skateboarder is we hung out the shops all the time. And if you're getting a board, you want to take it off the wall, you want to stand on it on the carpet, you want to, make sure that if you're going to invest, a couple $100 into this tool, that it's something that you're going to benefit from. And it's tough. I mean, especially with rods, like you said, you wait 3 weeks to get a rod, you get that rod, you know it doesn't feel it doesn't feel bad, but something isn't adding up or it doesn't feel right for the bait you're
Yeah.
throwing. And now you're on the hook for $180 to ship it to someone else on black market,
Mhm.
or you can try and return it, but you know how that goes. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's paramount to be able to go there and chop it up and ask people and get to feel it. And or if you're buying a $250 handle, that's a big jump for a lot of guys getting their first varial handle, like Ben and those guys, Griff, all those guys over there at the hookup, super accommodating, the coolest guys. And yeah, they've helped kind of, at least I know for myself in the beginning, steer me in the right direction on what are you trying to fish. Super knowledgeable. Okay, if you're fishing TKs, you don't got to worry about this big, stout broomstick of a rod until you start getting into bigger soft baits, things like that.
Yeah.
You can find anybody online that has an opinion about something, but it's still there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah, 100%, dude. What have you kind of settled with? Like what's the gear you use right now when we're recording this? If you're going out tomorrow, kind of what's the rods and baits that you're kind of bringing with you? Because like you said, not having a boat, you're kind of not necessarily limited, but you don't want to pack yourself down like a mule. You got to kind of travel lightly, especially if you're walking around a couple Arizona lakes and it's scorching hot. Maybe not necessarily right now in the winter time, but what's like your go-to
Yeah.
kind of 2, 3 setups that you take with you, throw in the car before you go out in the morning?
Yeah, I'm pretty much now. I've found a good rhythm with my kayaks. I'm kind of one of the only few dudes out there doing big bait fishing solely from a kayak. But I can pack a little bit more than I would on foot, but I still have to pack, pretty light getting in and out of there. I car top my kayak, like everything's got to fit in the rig
Yep.
before I get to the lake. So I'm running on any given day 3 rods. Ben's rods have I've found to be the most like versatile, especially for someone who wants to be able to pivot, depending on what you have tied on. If they're killing a TK that day, cool, you have one TK tied on to your medium heavy, but guess what? You can still get away with it on your heavy as well. If you're throwing a deep diving lip or a DTK 13.
Mhm.
So I've got a heavy standard issue. I've got the extra, extra heavy standard issue that I'll use for depths 250, tyrants, any of those sort of bigger baits, a ghost. And then I have in and out of rotation either the medium heavy standard issue or I have an extra heavy DRT studio composite for the beast. And I really like that one too. It's a little bit more forgiving, kind of like a big giant cranking stick, but it's super good for a lot of treble hook baits.
Right.
So those are about the 4 I have in rotation. And then I run a Daiwa Ryoga, the what is it, the 1016, I think it is.
Yeah.
Got the Ryoga, and then I've got 2 Daiwa Zillion HD TWs, the 1520s, and then I got a Tatula 300 that I use for some of the bigger stuff. But yeah, only about four rods and reels, and I'll usually bring 2 or 3 out with me, and I kind of dedicated to just a few baits. When did you ask about baits too, or did you just ask about the gear?
Yeah, yeah. Like, do you bring like maybe 2 medium underground bait wraps with you? Bring, maybe 8, 9, 10 baits with you, or kind of what's usually, do you just kind of maybe try to cover the water column for that day, or what's the go-to for baits?
Yeah, for me, resounded to pretty much this one lake that I'm putting all my time and effort into over this last year. Just kind of trying to learn it. And most of what I'm fishing is, you know, tooly edges you can't get to from the bank. So about 6 feet out to about 20 feet. So 6 to 20 feet on average. Uh, if I'm fishing that sort of area, I've got a shallow diving TK with either the minnow or the stock lip. I've got a TK with the DTK 13 lip. I actually like running that more than the counterweighted DTK 13 body because it floats a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
So that helps me get a little bit deeper down. And then one or two, either the passenger or the dead ringer. I've always got one of those on deck. Those shad style baits have been super productive for me out here. And then soft baits, Tyrant 8, maybe a Citizen 6 or 7. I personally haven't had a lot of luck on soft baits out here, but I'm usually sticking in that 2 to 4 ounce treble hook bait, whether it's a 2 piece glide or a 3 piece swimmer or the tiny clash, something like that.
Yeah. Do you still carry the Mag Draft Freestyle, or have you not touched those since then?
I actually threw in at a pond there and I had not the same luck. I think it was enough to get me enough to get me into it, but it hasn't necessarily produced the same way since then. So
Right. Heck yeah, dude. What kayak are you running?
I've bounced around on a few. I started out with a cheap like Ascend 12T, pretty low price, I think like 400 or 500 bucks new. A bit clunky, and out here in the summer, dude, it's so hot that it
Yeah.
destroys anything. It's not like super well made. From there, I went to the Old Town PDL 120. The pedal propulsion was nice for me to get to and from places a little bit easier. But at that point, I was still doing a lot of conventional fishing. Now that I'm a taller guy and getting up and down out of that old town to stand up and swim bait fish was getting pretty dicey. It sits pretty low, the seat's real low, and it's just a big it's a big transition to go from
Yeah.
standing to sitting. So I got rid of that, and now I'm running a bona fide SS 127. Um, and those, man, I mean, it doesn't have pedals on it, but the standing platform is amazing. The stability is unlike anything else, and it's got a super tall sitting seat. Um, that thing is, yeah, it's great. It's a real game changer for me. It's kind of a mini boat, but that's what I've been running now. I told myself I was going to buy some nice electronics and a motor for it, because they got some nice bolt-on parts that Bonafide makes. And I've had the most productive year of fishing I've ever had this year without electronics or without a motor. So it's kind of hard for me to invest a couple grand at this point when it's just working without it. So
Yeah.
um, keeping
Heck
it
yeah.
pretty stripped down.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome. Trying to think of anything else that I wanted to ask you. Nothing's coming to my head right now. But was there anything that you were ready to talk about that maybe we glazed over, didn't touch on at all?
Um, I feel like I had something. Um,
Yeah, I know. We talked quite a bit. I cannot for the life of me. Thought there was one or two things I wanted to ask you about the camera stuff, but I don't have it on top of my head right now. I should have wrote it down, but
No,
I
you're
didn't.
good. Yeah, the only thing we didn't talk about, and I don't know if it plays into if we are just talking mainly about the media stuff though, was just like conventional graphic design,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
merchandise
yeah.
design, like
Yeah, so I guess
yeah.
what do you do at work? Like do you make like logos like how I like my face logo, or kind of what does your job entail, and how have you gotten to partake that into like your media side of things on the fishing, like the fishing page?
Yeah, definitely. I run a team of graphic designers and a creative department at a big cannabis company out here in Arizona. So I'm not doing as much graphic design myself, but that's where I started. I was kind of the first in-house contractor that they had. They were outsourcing a lot of stuff, and so I was just a graphic designer. From there, I've kind of um, built my toolbox a little bit and got an awesome team of dudes that work for me. So within working in that cannabis company, we specialize and like really pride ourselves on like culture within that industry as well. So we produce, very high quality packaging, high quality merchandise that we give out, things like that. And so I kind of designed a little bit of everything. So from logos, that's where it starts, and then it goes on to garments. So I'm, really tapped in with like garment selection and print setup and things like that, and then as well as the packaging side and things. Kind of what I've learned from working there, another very saturated industry, is that first impression is like everything, and it's kind of hard to quantify what a first impression is, or like what the value is on a first impression. So that's something I've definitely tried to carry over, like even into, Instagram page, and it's nothing to go on and on about because I only got a couple hundred followers, but I really try and, put the attention to detail in anything it is that I'm putting out, whether it's the photos, or the screen grabs, things like that, is trying to make sure that if someone does come across, something that you're putting all this time and effort into, I think that it's just as important to make sure that that first impression that they're getting is as quality as the content they're going to watch or they're going to consume, after they get to that page.
Yeah.
So that's something I've kind of learned, I think, from branding overall in my career, so far. It's like how to apply that into other areas to be a little bit more properly vetted in 360 when you approach certain things instead of kind of just, getting right to the punch and hoping that that's enough.
Yeah. What just closing question that you can kind of give us your thoughts on. What's one thing that you see that maybe like there's a lot of guys who do, whether it's like content creation or whatever else it may be, that you try to that maybe that you take pride in that you do differently. Maybe like it's how we've been talking about the whole show that you kind of take more of a nostalgic viewpoint on like the video creation side of things, or maybe anything else. Like why do you enjoy what you do more so than maybe somebody else that records like a super nice camera or puts out some other form of content?
Yeah. See how I can boil that down. I think that for me, the kind of the biggest things that I try and take pride in is just consistency across the board. So if it's like, if it's a one post, it's the, like I said, it's the screen grab, it's the color grading on that photo as well as the color grading on the video that's going to play. It's making sure that, if it links out to a video on YouTube, that the quality is still there as well. Whether it's a caption, all those sort of things is just trying to be consistent. That doesn't mean consistency doesn't mean just like the output or the number of output that you're, shelling out there. It's just waiting till you have quality stuff to talk about to put it out. And I think that that is something that I do see a lot of guys like fall into is, you got guys on YouTube, and I'm not gonna name any names, but you got guys that put out quality content and things, super amazing videos. And then the next one is, yeah, what can I catch on these chips that I bought from the gas station? And it's just you can tell when people are kind of sacrificing some of their I don't want to say integrity, but maybe the integrity of the video
Yeah, trying to
just
meet
to put
deadlines or
something out.
something. Yep, yeah.
Exactly. And what I've learned is like, dude, nobody's gonna know if you didn't put that one video out that you didn't like, but they're gonna know if you put it out regardless. So trying to make sure that you're just holding yourself to a standard of things that, if someone's gonna spend 10 minutes out of their day to watch something I'm putting together, I want to make sure that it's entertaining for them and that it's quality stuff and it's not just me trying to capitalize on something else that's floating around out there just for some quick buzz or quick dopamine hits. Is yeah, just trying to be a little bit more thorough and a little bit more thoughtful about anything that you're creating.
Yeah, I found that it's easy to make something if I make something in Photoshop or Illustrator. I'm like, oh, dude, this is perfect, whether it's a thumbnail or whatever else it may be. It helps to have a group of guys for myself to kind of fall back on. Guys who maybe not necessarily don't care about your feelings, but ones that are going to be brutally honest with you, maybe a little bit more than
Sure.
constructive criticism, where like Marshall's the guy who will just tell me how it is. He's like, dude, I know what you
Yeah.
can do. You threw this thing together in 45 minutes. Spend another half hour
Right.
doing it. This is terrible, dude. You know you can do it better. And as much as I'm like, dude, screw you, Marshall, like you asshole, like this is just fine for what it is. And then I sit there and look at it, and I'm kind of the person that's never completely sold on stuff I make. So whether somebody else likes it or not, I'm always like, no, no, it's stupid. I could have done this maybe different. Maybe I didn't know how, or I don't know how to go about it. Uh, and then other times I'm like, dude, I've been working on this for an hour and a half. This is as good as it's gonna be. And then just to have somebody in your ear that's like, dude, no, no, I know you can do it better. You're like, oh my God, now I got
Yeah.
to. Now I have to because if somebody else tells me that it's not to the standard of my other content, like I've got to at least reach that point or exceed it. And to have somebody who's brutally honest with you and just tell you how it is, that makes it so much easier if you're the type of person that I am and kind of a little bit wishy-washy here and there. So, dude, I know exactly what you mean because I feel like I do that sometimes. So to hear that kind of that you can see it and notice it, that just makes me know that other people who maybe aren't familiar with like the media side of things like you and I are can also tell if you're hyped about talking in a video or hyped about going out to fish on this day or whatever else it may be. So it just goes to show that you can see authenticity through the camera, whether you believe it or not. It definitely is something that people can pick up. Maybe not everybody, but there's definitely people who can put two and two together on if you're psyched about a video, or if it's your best work you've put out or not, or something subpar that you did to meet a deadline on posting once a week or whatever else it may be.
Well, yeah, and not that it's all about likes at all. It's not. But how many dudes have you seen that have, 10.5, 22 point whatever
Yeah.
thousand followers, and then every post that they post has 40 likes on it, and it's
Yep.
like, you know, the numbers aren't the math ain't math in there. If you just try to be a little bit more thoughtful and invest and be thorough in it, you might not have as big of a pool to pull from, but that pool of dudes that are interacting with you on a consistent basis and do appreciate, the little bit extra sauce that you're putting on things,
Yeah.
that's much more valuable to me. Is, having authentic dudes surrounding you, whether they're telling you that you should be holding yourself to a higher standard, or it's just the ones that you're interacting after you post stuff. Yeah, much rather have some um, more valuable relationships than have, just more of them in general.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. 100%, dude. Well, man, where can the people follow you? We've been talking about it. We've been talking about your content and stuff. So people are just now finishing this episode. Where can they punch in on Instagram or YouTube and kind of watch some of the videos and kind of see your style that we've been discussing for the last hour?
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate it. You can follow me on Instagram at the Reel of Fortune, all one word. And then on YouTube as well, the Reel of Fortune, spaces in between. But yeah, that's me. I feel like this year's gonna be a good year. I'm really sitting on some good stuff that we're gonna be putting out. Finally got a break at my 9 to 5, so got a little more time to dedicate to this stuff, and got a bunch of good ideas this year on some things that I want to get started that I haven't been seeing in the fishing space. Whether it's different, what would you call that? Not themes, but uh, different types of videos. But
Totally.
what am I blanking on that word, dude? Help me out.
Well,
Um,
so like something I notice is like the style. There a lot of fishing videos have a style and they all share that style where you see something and I'm like, dude, I could have taken these angles different or I could have taken these shots or
yeah.
the way he's talking about it, you could have overlaid this style of B-roll with it or whatever else it may be. So that's what I've noticed. I don't know if that's what you were going for, but that's kind of what I was guessing you were trying to touch on.
Yeah, not categories, but I was gonna say like types of videos. What would you call those? Like not themes, but like
Oh,
like you have different sections in like your zine.
yeah, categories.
Yeah, just like different categories of
Yeah.
videos. I think that that can reach more people. I want to, do some stuff with different skateboarders and fishing in the same day. I've got some ideas on like a video series. A series is what I was looking for. A
Oh,
series of
there we go. Yeah,
videos.
yeah.
Some things like that I'm working with some skate fishermen to try and put together. So that'll be cool. But yeah, just trying to find some gaps and bridge those, and yeah, just make some cool shit this year. So um yeah, I'm stoked and gonna keep at it. It's slow right now, but it's not gonna stay slow. So I'm gonna be ready once those fish are biting again.
Heck yeah, man. Once the weather warms or heats up a little bit more in Arizona, I should say. But as always, I'll put
Yeah,
all of Garrett's stuff in the show notes in the description so you guys can follow him. Go check out the videos that we've been talking about this whole time, Instagram and YouTube. And as always, if you're not following the podcast, Scales and Tails underscore media on Instagram, Scales and Tails media on Facebook and YouTube. Check out the Patreon if you guys haven't. You get early access to episodes plus early access to merch drops, and they get first access to the magazines when we do the pre-order. Those guys are usually already getting their magazines. So check that out if you guys want. We got a $5 and a $10 tier, whatever you guys feel comfortable with doing. We appreciate here, helps us do some stuff. A lot of big plans in 2025. Garrett was kind of talking about his plans, and we also have some pretty big plans for 2025. So, dude, 2025 is going to be a good year for the fishing or the swim bait industry. I network with a lot of people, and dude, there's a lot of cool stuff going on. I'm excited. I'm excited to see all the media side of things that kind of are getting tapped into because I'm gonna be honest, the fishing scene just kind of seems dead. Like you talked about, everybody's going to the gas station, doing their daily vlogs and catching fish on gummy worms or whatever else it may be. It's time that new life gets breathed into it, whether it's series or kind of crazy videos or takes or whatever else it may be, underwater footage, breakdowns of videos or whatever else. I think 2025 is going to be a really good year for the swim bait scene. I'm excited. I hope you guys enjoy consuming this content that so many of us are taking our time with and kind of perfecting and really planning out and planning. But again, as always, I'll put all of Garrick's stuff in the show notes. You guys can go follow him if you're not already. Go check his stuff out. It's super cool. I appreciate you coming on, man. I'm glad that you kind of shared the sauce a little bit with the camera stuff because it's super badass. People may not have understood it, but I did, so I appreciate your time on breaking that stuff down, man. It's super awesome. It's something that you don't really get to see a lot in this style of fishing or in the fishing scene at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. Thank you for having me, Adrian. It's great to meet you. And yeah, I'm stoked to prop each other up. It's gonna be a good year for swim baiting and media. So stoked to see what everybody else is putting out and kind of setting a new standard this year.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, as always, guys, make sure you follow Garrett. All of his stuff will be linked, like I said. Make sure you follow the podcast, the media page, whatever you guys want to call it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you guys on the next one. See you guys.